Okay, so today we are going to study general adaptation syndrome. As the name suggests, general adaptation syndrome means something which is a common phenomenon between all of us or between different human beings with regard to stress, which helps in adapting to different kind of situations or change in situations. We know that stress also happens or occurs due to change. Changes can be big as well as small, but they can lead to stress. So, general adaptation syndrome, given by the father of modern stress research, Hans Selye, was basically about physiological basis of stress, right? About the physiological structure of stress, and it limits the psychological impact or psychological what we can say like psychological issues related with stress, psychological causes related to stress. Okay, let us start general adaptation syndrome. So the question they posed is what happens to the body when stress is prolonged, right? Selle studied this issue by subjecting animals to a variety of stressors such as high temperature, X-rays, and insulin injections in the lab over a longer period of time. He also observed patients with various injuries and illnesses in hospitals. Selle noticed a similar pattern of bodily responses in all of them. That's why it is called as general adaptation syndrome. According to him, gas involves three stages, right? GAS, in short, we can call it gas. It involves three stages. First is alarm reaction, second is resistance stage, and third is exhaustion stage. And they have given the diagram here for general adaptation syndrome. So during when we do appraisal, like first stage is appraisal. So after primary appraisal, when we label the particular stress as stressful event as a negative stress, then our secondary appraisal starts, right? And during that particular stage of secondary appraisal, when we know that this is a kind of stress that I am going to face, so that at that stage, this particular first point, that alarm reaction starts within our body. Our sympathetic nervous system becomes active either for fight or flight, right? Then after a certain time, when we are done fighting with, then there is a stage of resistance, right? Stage of resistance means we are just kind of dealing with that particular situation, not posing a threat to that particular situation, not facing that situation in a challenging manner, right? That is called as stage of resistance. And after a certain period of time, our resources deplete and we feel tired, we feel exhausted. That would be called as stage of exhaustion, which is third stage. So in third stage, it is a kind of surrender that we have tried our best, we are doing our best in that particular situation to resolve that particular stressful issue, but we are not able to resolve that. So at that particular stage, we get exhausted, right? Let us
Mhm,
move.
ma'am.
Yes, Vasundhara.
Ma'am, please tell what is the difference between exhaustion and resistance?
Resistance is the continuous challenges that you pose during a stressful situation, right? We tend to fight. Our first tendency is to fight, is to face that particular stress. But if we consider that it is more than my capabilities, if our self-efficacy is low, if our controllability factors are low, if we are more vulnerable to different kind of diseases, we are stress prone, we are not a stress resistant personality, right? Then it would lead to stage of exhaustion, and everybody has different time limit of resistance stage. No two people can be same, they can be similar but they cannot be same, right? So everybody has different, like we have different strategies of dealing with different kind of stressful issues. Similarly, we have different kind of limits. Specifically, I'm talking about time limits, up to which we can kind of pose a challenge to that threat, pose a challenge to that stressful situation. That is called as resistance. We are resisting against that particular external event which is perceived by us as stress. We are trying our best not to let ourselves hold by that particular situation. Our mind is working properly, we are trying to focus on that particular situation. We are more of solution focused during that particular stage, right? We are trying to overcome the situation. That is resistance. But in exhaustion stage, your resources gets depleted and you are more of in a surrendering situation. Like I have done, I have done my best, I have done according to my capabilities. Now I can no more face this particular thing. So either you don't try to pose that threat to that particular situation, you don't try to change the situation, you don't use any kind of task oriented strategies to deal with that situation. That is called as exhaustion stage. Right, Vasundhara?
Yes, ma'am, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so let us study these three stages once. Alarm reaction stage. The presence of a noxious stimulus, noxious is bad, or stressor leads to activation of the adrenal pituitary cortex system. This we have already studied in chapter 3 in class 11, as well as in this particular chapter, right? So this is adrenal pituitary cortex axis, which is responsible for activation of our sympathetic nervous system and our body's physiological responses to stress. This triggers the release of hormones producing the stress response. Now the individual is ready for fight or flight. This we have already discussed, that sympathetic nervous system's activation would lead to either fight reaction or flight reaction. Second stage is resistance stage. If stress is prolonged, the resistance stage begins. The parasympathetic nervous system calls for more cautious use of the body's resources. The organism makes efforts to cope with the threat as through confrontation. So this I have already explained to you, that when stress is comparatively longer, right? If at the end of alarm reaction stage, stress does not end, or if we do not have any particular solution to that particular stress, then it is prolonged and the resistance stage begins. During this particular stage, one important aspect which I missed during the explanation was the parasympathetic nervous system calls for more cautious use of bodily resources. That means that parasympathetic nervous system also gets activated along with sympathetic nervous system. So they both are working in tandem. As long as you are working on that particular stressful situation, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. And as soon as you leave that situation, your parasympathetic nervous system activates to reserve your resources, to save your resources, so that if the stage still prolongs, then you have the resources to deal with it for a longer time, right? Organism makes efforts to cope with the threat as through confrontation. This we have discussed. Exhaustion stage. Continued exposure to the same stressor or additional stressors drains the body of its resources and leads to third stage of exhaustion. Physiological system involved in alarm reaction and resistance become ineffective, and susceptibility to stress related diseases such as high blood pressure becomes more likely. So as I told you, like self efficacy is an important aspect of our personality. So if we are during exhaustion stage, it is our self efficacy, our self confidence, our controllability of the situation which gets affected, and we have low confidence in ourselves because we have already done whatever we can do and in that particular situation. So that would lead to our proneness to stress related disease, and proneness to different kind of physiological disorders also, in which high blood pressure is a common disease, right? Selye's model has been criticized for assigning a very limited role to psychological factors in stress. This I have already discussed because it is all physiological in nature. He has discussed what happens when everyone is faced with stress, being having similar kind of physiological system. All human beings behave in a similar manner, like our bodies are similar. Our everybody's heart just pumps, right? Lungs are for exhalation and inhalation process. Blood circulation is same in everybody's body. So this is just a physiological basis or physiological aspect of stress according to Selye's model. He has not given any particular psychological factor which are responsible or like which can be important. Like I talked about self efficacy, he has not talked about self efficacy, right? But it is an important aspect. I've talked about controllability, which is a factor in perception. Perception is psychological in nature. So he's not talked about perceptibility or perception or controllability factors either. So this is why this is a kind of we can say flaw in this particular model. Researchers have reported that the psychological appraisal of events is important for the determination of stress. That we know because we have studied primary and secondary appraisal. Without appraisal, we are not even going to know what kind of stress it is, right? So how would we approach that particular stress? How people respond to stress is substantially influenced by their perceptions, personalities, and biological constitutions. So all these things work in tandem, like your personalities, how you perceive that particular situation, what is the intensity, what is the gravity of that particular situation according to you. That would be defined by your perceptions. And all this work with biological constitution. So biological constitution is either you are a stress prone personality, or you are stress resistant personality, or you have vulnerability towards certain kind of biological diseases like high blood pressure, like diabetes, like cancer, which runs in your family, right? Or your body constitution is comparatively weak, like it doesn't run in your family, it's not genetic, but your particular biological system is not able to handle that much of a stress, right? So it would lead to certain kind of diseases. Next is stress and immune system. So I think much of the knowledge we have gained about stress and immune system. Right, but additional, we would see what it is there. So stress can cause illness by impairing the workings of immune system, that we all know. Immune system guards our body against attackers, both from within and outside. And it is the branch of psychoneuroimmunology, which is basically the study of psychological factors as well as neurological factors, which are important for increasing our immunity, or which affects our immunity, right? So it focuses on the links between the mind, which is a part of psychology, the brain, which is physiology, and which is important for neurons or neurology, and the immune system, right? So it is a study of mind, brain, and our immune system. It studies the effects of stress on immune system. How does the immune system work? So we all know that we have RBCs in our blood which are oxygen carriers, and we have WBCs in our blood, which are white blood cells or white blood corpuscles, which are called as leukocytes, which identify and destroy foreign bodies such as viruses, bacteria, etc. And after a certain level of fight, they also lead to production of antibodies. So like in vaccination of corona, it has been said that once you get the vaccine, it will generate antibodies in your body for that particular infection. And if by chance you happen to catch that infection, it would not be that bad if you have suffered it without the introduction to vaccine, right? So this is only a game of antibodies, how our body is tackling with that particular virus. This is a kind of lock and key system, students. Like we have a separate key for each and every lock. Similarly, our body, how for as many as viruses our body reacts to, it generates certain kind of antibodies, or different kind of locks to those particular viruses. So it has that tendency to activate that particular system in our body, which is responsible for, or which is accountable for increasing our immunity for different kind of viruses. So it acts on each and every virus differently. That is why vaccination of rubella would work on rubella only, vaccination of polio would work on polio only, vaccination for corona would work on corona only, right? So there are several kinds of white blood cells, or WBCs, we can say, within the new immune system. These are like T cells, B cells, and natural killer cells. T cells destroy invaders. Invaders are those antigens which attack our body from outside, and T helper cells increase immunological activity. They are basically helper of the T cells. It is these T helper cells that are attacked by human immunodeficiency virus. As we all have heard about HIV, it is human immunodeficiency virus. It is basically an external virus or kind of invader which attack our T helper cells, right? Which are responsible for increasing the activity of T cells to save our body, to increase antibodies in our immune system to deal with that particular disease, right? So this virus causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS in short form. B cells produce antibodies. Natural killer cells are involved in the fight against both viruses and tumors. So stress can affect natural killer cells. Cytotoxicity. What is cytotoxicity? Cyto means cell. Toxicity means cell toxicity, right? Are different kind of cells which are specifically these natural killer cells. They have certain kind of toxicity in them, or they produce certain kind of toxins, which are toxins not for our body but the invaders, because they are naturally killing the invaders, right? So stress affects our cytotoxicity, like it is a major factor which reduces our cytotoxicity. and it kind of reduces our defense against different kind of infections, and more specifically fatal disease, which is cancer. Reduced level of natural killer cell cytotoxicity have been found in people who are highly stressed, including students facing important examination, bereaved persons. Bereaved persons means people who are sad for extremely longer periods, who have lost someone from their life, and those who are severely depressed. Studies reveal that immune functioning is better in individuals receiving social support. Also, changes in immune system will have more effect on health among those whose immune systems are already weakened. Now, figure 3.4 depicts the sequence comprising negative emotions, release of stress hormone, which lead to weakening of immune system, thereby affecting mental and physical health. So, please go through this particular figure 3.4. It is blurred in my book, and you can go through it with the help of your own book. We will be next continuing with psychological stress is accompanied by negative emotions and associated behaviors. So what is a kind of psychological stress? Stress, no doubt, is physiological in nature, as we have already studied in the above paragraph, that it has different kind of factors which are physiological in nature. But psychological, if it is psychological in nature, like if it is impacting our mind, it is impacting our cognitive abilities, then it would also affect our emotions, and it is accompanied by negative emotions and associated behaviors, including depression, hostility, anger, and aggression. So I would like to ask this question here, if somebody can explain what is the difference between anger and aggression. Gaurika?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the difference between anger and aggression?
Ma'am, I am thinking, just a minute.
Mehak, can you answer this? Mehak. Navleen. I hope everyone is there.
Ma'am, aggression can be the behavior which is violent, and it can be also related to anger.
So that is why I'm asking, no, what is the difference between anger and aggression? It's right.
Ma'am, I think
anger
is situation when things are not going our way and we are not able to accept it, and then there is a irritation and frustration that leads to a certain situation which we label as anger. And aggression is when our energy is way too high and we do everything with a sharp blunt of energy.
Yes, it's completely right, Vasundhara. Very good. So anger and aggression are basically, anger is the feeling part, right? Every emotion, we have different kind of emotions, and every emotion is attached with a certain kind of feeling. So anger is a feeling of frustration, anger is a feeling of irritation, and aggression is its active part, right? The behavioral component of anger, behavioral component of that particular feeling called anger is aggression. We always tend to say that this is his aggressive act, he act aggressively, right? So we never say he acted angrily. हम बहुत कम इसको use करते हैं. We always tend to say that he was behaving aggressively. So aggression is a kind of active part or action with related to the feeling which is called as anger, right? Now, negative emotion states are of particular concern to the study of effects of stress on health. The incidence of psychological disorders such as panic attacks and obsessive behavior increases with the buildup of long-term stress. So whatever we are going to study in chapter 4, it also has certain information regarding these different kind of diseases or psychological disorders in this particular chapter also, like panic attacks and OCD, obsessive compulsive behavior, are related to stress, increased and long-term level of stress. Worries can reach such a level that they surface as a frightening, painful physical sensation, which can be mistaken for a heart attack. And this can be termed as psychosomatic diseases, according to chapter 4, abnormal behavior or abnormality or psychological diseases, which worries which can level to which can transformed into a frightening and painful physical sensation, which can be mistaken for a heart attack. It is not actual heart attack, but it feels as if you are getting a heart attack. So that is called as psychosomatic disease, psychological symptoms which are depictable, or which are representing themselves in physical forms, right? So these are psychosomatic diseases. People under prolonged stress are more prone to irrational fears. Irrational fears are those fears which are not actually present, which are not real fears, but they are imagined in themselves, right? Mood swings, we all know what mood swings are. And phobias. Phobias are fear from different kind of objects or different activities, like fear of heights, right? Fear of water, fear of fire, fear of spiders, right? So these are different kind of phobias, and may experience fits of depression, anger, and irritability. When you do not have any control over external situations, you would definitely have fits of depression, anger, and irritability, right? These negative emotions appear to be related to the function of immune system. Our ability to interpret our world and to invest that interpretation with personal meaning and emotion have a powerful and direct effect on the body. So this is what Selle was missing on, right? It is our ability to interpret and our perceptions and our personal meaning and emotions that are very important for whatever we are feeling, how our body is reacting to different kind of stressors. Negative moods have been associated with poorer health outcomes. Feelings of hopelessness are related to worsening of diseases, increased risk of injury, and death due to various causes. So this is also a general observation that people who are more who see more negatively, or who perceive the situation as in negative terms, as compared to people who are quite positive about the outcome of any negative situation. In case of first one, who are more negative, they are more prone to different kind of diseases. And if they are already diseased, like they have some kind of disorders like high BP or something, they would not be leading a good life. They always have different kind of issues, physiological as well as psychological, cropping up in their lives, right? So it is very much clear that we always have to have a certain kind of positive attitude, whatever be the situation, right? Next, lifestyle. How lifestyle affects stress. So lifestyle can lead to stress, or can help us, making us self-resistant, stress resistant. Sorry. So stress can lead to unhealthy lifestyle or health damaging behavior. What a lifestyle is? It is an overall pattern of decisions and behavior that determines or that decides a person's health and quality of life. So stressed individual may be more likely to expose themselves to pathogens. What are pathogens? Path means something which is not good, something which is bad. So pathogens are these organisms which are agents that are responsible for different kind of physical issues or physical illnesses. People who are stressed have poor nutritional habits, sleep less, and are likely to engage in other health risking behaviors like smoking and alcohol abuse. So we know that when you any one of you feel stressed, definitely you would not like to eat healthy food, right? It is a common observation, and it has been proven by many researchers also, that people, whenever they are stressed, they tend to eat fatty foods which are high in fat, or we can say more oily in stuff, and more sugary, right? So this all leads to sleeplessness, or we can say sleep issues, and they are likely to engage in other health risking behaviors also. To avoid that particular stressful situation, they might engage in smoking or alcohol to reduce the stress for a certain period of time. Because whenever you are intoxicated with the help of alcohol, you would not feel, you would not be able to think about different kind of life situations which are stressful for you. So this is just a kind of stopgap arrangement for a few hours, we say. Such health impairing behaviors develop gradually and are accompanied by pleasant experiences temporarily. This is what I was saying, that it is a pleasant experiences, no doubt, but these are of temporary nature for a few hours. However, we tend to ignore their long-term damaging effects and underestimate the risk they pose to our lives. Studies have revealed that health-promoting behavior like balanced diet, regular exercise, family support, etc., play an important role in good health. Adhering to a lifestyle that includes balanced, low-fat diet, regular exercise, and continued activity along with positive thinking enhances health and longevity. So here, balanced diet is also important. Regular exercise is important. Family support is also important. So they have also include balanced low-fat diet. So why are they recommending a low-fat diet, which is balanced in nature? First and foremost reason is that we are lacking in physical activity these days, right? In earlier times, we are more of a physical being. Like everything we have to do with our, through movements or more of a physical activities involved in each and everything. Like if you want to go to a nearby shop for shopping something, for having some pencil or some pen. Nowadays, you use scooty or scooters or bikes or cars for such a simple and small activity. Earlier, we used to go on our foot, right? So that is, constitutively, we can say, if on a larger scale we see, that would constitute a comparatively more physical activity as compared to these days. Now, the modern lifestyle of excesses in eating, drinking, and the so-called fast-paced good life has led to violation of basic principles of health in some of us as to what we eat, how we think, and what we do with our lives. So in order to to match up with the speed of life, match up with the speed of information technology, we say, we tend to lose on our life, we tend to lose on everything which was important for us, which was important for our body, which was important for our mind even. So we are lacking on all those factors. So I would like to do an activity of this sort, that what do you think are these factors which can be controlled in this fast paced life and which would help us to kind of make us stable a bit, right? We are always in a hurry, we always want everything on on just like we order anything, like everything is just like a 2-minute Maggi noodle, right? So what are the factors or what are the strategies that we can use to slow it a bit, right? Now next topic is coping with stress. So coping is basically a dynamic situation specific reaction to stress. So it is dynamic because stress is also dynamic. Stress is not stable. Stress can be of different types, of different nature, of different intensity and duration. So that is why coping would also be different. Coping is actually dealing with that particular situation which is stressful in nature, right? So it is a set of concrete responses to a stressful situation or events that are intended to resolve the problem and reduce stress. The way we cope with stress often depends on rigid, deep-seated beliefs based on experience. That is, when caught in a traffic jam, we feel angry because we believe that the traffic should move faster. So stress is often dependent upon our deep-seated beliefs. What are our beliefs? What are our beliefs? Mehak?
Ma'am, trust, faith.
Come again, bache.
Trust or faith in something that exists.
Yes, it can be said. But our belief system are basically, I think, our cognitive systems, the mental maps, the mental concepts, mental constructs that we build around different kind of experiences, right? So these deep-seated beliefs are rigid in nature. Why these are rigid in nature? Because our personality is kind of, yes, it is. It can be an impact of culture, Vasundhara, but I would say that not only culture but individual factors are also important in your belief systems, right? And these are also based on experiences. What kind of experiences, like how you are feeling in a different kind of situation, what emotions are arousing within you in different kind of situations, that would lead to a different kind of belief system, right? If you talk to a person and he talks, in a very good manner to you, then 2 to 3 times, then you would feel that this is such a nice person. But if a person is not in a good mood someday and he would behave rudely with you, so you would just conclude that this person is not good. I've just asked a simple question from him or her and he's behaving in such a manner. So that is how we start making beliefs. To manage stress, we often need to reassess the way we think and learn coping strategies. People who cope poorly with stress have an impaired immune response and diminished activity of natural killer cells. This we have already studied. Individuals show consistent individual differences in coping strategies they use to handle stressful situations. This we know because we all have different belief system and different personalities. And these handling strategies or coping strategies can be both overt as well as covert. Overt are which are visible outer surface outside, and covert are which are internal in nature. So 3 coping strategies which are given by Endler and Parker are task-oriented strategy. This involves obtaining information about the stressful situation and about alternative courses of action and their probable outcome. So this is basically when we are more of problem focused rather than when we are more of solution focused rather than problem focused. So this is known as task oriented strategy. The task which is challenging us, which we perceive as a challenge for us, we tend to complete that particular task using different kind of plans, using different kind of strategies, how to complete that task in a limited time frame. So it also involves deciding priorities and acting so as to deal directly with the stressful situation. For example, schedule my time better or think about how I have solved similar problems. So task-oriented strategy can be like, if I say that you would be having a test on a Friday, right? And you have to prepare this particular chapter and this particular portion from this chapter. So you would be preparing this chapter according to different kind of time provided to you, right? Now you have like today is Tuesday and Friday, you have 2-3 days in between. So you would be preparing it a plan according to which, and plus if you, some other teacher is also asking you for a test which is on Saturday. So first you would prepare the test which would be on Friday, and then you would prepare the test which would be on Saturday. So this is prioritizing your life, prioritizing the different kind of tasks that are important to you, right? And planning about them. Task oriented, we would be studying coping strategies by Lazarus and Folkman after these strategies. And in that strategy, there is one strategy which is problem focused strategy. So that is also similar to task oriented strategy. Next is emotion oriented strategy. This is also same in Lazarus and Folkman's theory. So emotion oriented strategy is where you think that you are emotionally becoming unstable and the stressful situation is directly attacking your